Welcome back as the teams gear up for round 2 of Team Dignitas versus Cloud9. Dignitas had themselves a solid win in game number 1. A little slow going there in the mid game, but hey, they found their victory, and as soon as that Baron happened, kaboom, they won.
Yeah, and they clearly showed that the onus was on Cloud9 to actually make the plays because Dignitas was very confident in their late game, right? They were able to play that out extremely well. You know, they built up the armor penetration and the magic penetration, and they were able to shred through Cloud9's front line pretty comfortably. Altec actually did triple the damage that Sneaky did in this game. He did like 30,000 damage, massively out-damaging anyone from Cloud9. He was able to be very effective because he had so much safety from the Morgana and his front line, and late game Caitlyn is just really hard to deal with.
Talking about that safety as well, both Keen and Altec, 0 deaths combined in game number 1. Neither one of those carries ever dropped. The front line, the supports, the playmakers, everybody did a good job making sure those two were facilitated from game start to game end.
Yeah, they really did, and it'll be interesting to see, you know, if Altec can be this super consistent carry for Dignitas, because the rest of the team has been doing very well. I mean, Shrimp has had some ups and downs, but Someday, Keen, Big, like these guys have been working very well as a unit, and Shrimp, for the most part, has been exceptionally good. You know, he had a few head-scratching moments here and there, you know, like yesterday against Immortals, you know, kind of giving over some silly kills. But that's, you know, it's a bit of give and take, right? If you're going to have someone who's a super, super aggressive early jungler, then sometimes it's going to go really bad.
They're going to have games where they make a call early and it looks like it could go really well, and then it just goes the other way.
Yeah, and sometimes it goes like it went in the early game in this game, in game 1, right, where he's everywhere, killing everyone. And it did feel like Shrimp was just pretty much the entire catalyst for the early game out of Dignitas, which was that big lead that they got out to, and it did help to push them to a point where they could just kind of scale and secure the Baron and eventually take the game.
I mean, there's a reason we gave him player of the game, right? He was how they got ahead early on in those fights. We also can't forget or neglect the Drake control they had, because you explained how those triple Ocean Drakes contributed them to getting the Baron that ultimately won them the game. It was that start to finish neutral objective control from Shrimp that led Dignitas to be in that spot.
Exactly, and the regen is very, very powerful, but you have to play around that, right? If you go into an all-in fight and you fight to the death from full HP to dead, the Ocean Dragon does nothing for you. But when you have these extended fights where they did around Baron, where you start fighting, you get low, you back off, you reset with your Caitlyn trap line, you regen up, now the other team doesn't really have an answer.
Yeah, and speaking of the other team not having an answer, not being able to do what they wanted to do, one of the observations that we've made of Cloud9 so far in summer is Jensen is awesome. And if Jensen is not able to be awesome, how do they win? You mentioned Altec tripling Sneaky's damage. Impact, we've talked about him not having the greatest presence, the greatest showing so far in summer. And when Jensen was at a spot where he was just behind Keen the entire time, the team fell apart.
Yeah, I mean, you're used to Jensen just dominating mid laners so hard, but when 2 kills and double buffs go over to your lane opponent a couple minutes into the game, there's not a lot you can do to really bully that lane from there. No. And to Jensen's credit, he actually ended up, you know, going around even or even getting a little bit ahead in the farm and playing that lane out very well from what was an extremely difficult spot. But yeah, he was not dominating, and you have not seen those carry performances or really massive performances from guys like Impact and Ray this split. So it's tough for Sneaky on the kind of shorter range AD carry who was behind, and for Jensen on the Orianna who was quite behind to really take over the game.
Speaking of Impact and Ray, Impact not going to be subbed out or anything this game. We're not going to see either a roster change from either side, I should say. We know both these teams have more than just the 5 players at the start, but we're going to be sticking with the same 10 players going into Game 2. LeBlanc, Lucian, Kennen, the bans from Dig, Cloud9 taking Caitlyn, Galio, and Zac off the table.
And we haven't actually seen Ray swap in a while, it feels like now. We've been seeing mostly Impact since Ray was around a lot at the start of the season. Either way, Elise going to be the first pick here. Interesting, prioritized above the Lee Sin again, even though Shrimp has been absolutely crushing it on that Lee Sin. Elise, obviously a fantastic early game jungler. A lot of players do kind of like Olaf as an answer, but there are multiple options to go into it. Olaf just kind of is considered one of those answers because, you know, at level 6, you really can deal with her so well. If she cannot CC you up with a cocoon, there's not much of an answer.
Right. Every time you see Elise make a play or have a good duel against someone, it starts off usually with a cocoon from the darkness somehow, whether it's in a brush or just obscured vision in some way, then into the burst. But Olaf doesn't really concern himself too much with that. Gragas is going to be picked up for Cloud9 this time, along with Jhin for Sneaky.
And I am expecting it to be Gragas top, but you can flex that around. So once again, they're utilizing picks like this to try to make it more difficult to actually know where to target in picks and bans. And the Jhin has been one of Sneaky's tried and true picks for a really long time. And with the most recent buffs in the patch, it's actually very, very strong. You can build, you don't have to go for things like Death Dance. You don't have to go for utility like the Essence Reaver. You can go for pure DPS type builds with the Infinity Edge and with these Energizer type builds. And it's very, very powerful.
The answer from Dignitas is going to be Varus. So they'll be playing the champion that Sneaky was playing last time around. We're seeing a couple of those champion trades. Someday, last time with Gragas, this time locked in for C9. And Dig will say, you know what? We like Someday on Fiora. Even though you might not be playing that Gragas up there in the top side, we're comfortable picking this.
Yeah, and I mean, with Kennen already off the table, that's one of the toughest matchups. The question is, what carry top laners does Impact even play that he would be comfortable dealing with this on? You know, he's not a guy that we've seen like a lot of Jace from or anything like that, you know? And if you are going to play a tank, no matter what tank you pick, it can be very tough. Renekton is one that can deal with Fiora early, and certainly you're going to have the ability to get an advantage, but it's a champion that can be outplayed by Fiora. If you're able to parry that stun from Renekton, you can easily turn around one of the fights, and even if you do not get ahead, later in the game you'll simply outscale the Renekton in 1v1.
Yeah, usually you're putting yourself on about a 30, 35-minute timer as the Renekton against the Fiora. Once she hits that point and has about 3 items, you're on the back foot from here on out.
3 items is generally where it's all over as any sort of a tank against Fiora. Where she out-heals both the turret and you at the same time. It feels good.
Yeah, fun times, plus the vitals make it very difficult to build any sort of tank itemization against that. But that's the job that Impact has to complete this time around if they want to win here. Braum banned away by Cloud9, Syndra by Dignitas. It's really common, I feel like, to see these Syndra bans from blue side during the second phase, just so you know you can safe pick that Orianna if need be.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense because it is such a flexible pick coming into that next round. Being able to pick that up, Orianna is just really, really powerful. There's not a lot of things that are tough for her to deal with in the mid lane. You know, Ahri is one that is kind of considered a bit of a tough matchup. Syndra is really the big one. But besides those two, most people are pretty happy to play into any matchup.
Cloud9 paying some respect towards Big, banning away the Morgana he played last time. There were multiple moments that we saw where that Black Shield came in clutch.
And I think this is trying to force Dignitas into a Thresh ban or to give that away. You know, Blitzcrank is the other option that is pretty strong against that, but you know, these are two matchups that are not really favorable for Thresh, so we could see Sneaky and Smoothie run that Thresh Jhin lane, which has a lot of CC, a lot of engage potential, and can be very powerful because Morgana's not going to be an answer and tank supports are another one. That said, there is also Tahm Kench that you can use to kind of answer into that, so let's see what they're going to go for.
Cloud9 looking to deny that Orianna away from Dignitas. They'll lock that one in now for Jensen's second game in a row. He did have some shockwaves that were almost able to make a pretty noticeable difference in some fights, but the thing was the fights were either always over or there just wasn't anybody else there to follow up. The pieces all weren't on the table.
Yeah, and Jensen just plays a lot of Orianna. I mean, this has been one of his most played champions for a really long time. It is his most played again this split. That was game number 6. This will be game number 7 for him on the champion. Victor is a fine answer again. It essentially just makes it into a skill matchup, makes it into a relatively easy farm lane. A lot of players do use the Ahri as an answer, but Keen has really not been a guy who's been playing a lot of Ahri whatsoever. In fact, I don't even think he has a single pick on it.
Yeah, I don't see any games for Keen's recent history in terms of mid lane and Ahri, but he does have Victor in there. He's going to be rocking that one again. We saw an awesome performance from it in game number 1. Big also going to be on the Thresh. Cloud9 thinking of responding to that with the Tahm Kench, who, when you get Death Sentence, Tahm Kench gobbles you up, and then all of a sudden you're not in any trouble.
Yeah, and it makes a lot of sense against Elise as well, right? So it is going to be a pretty good answer there. I also always like Tahm Kench to have this kind of semi-global ultimate in a split push matchup, right? So when Renekton is going to be struggling in this 1v1 against Fiora, you can ultimate in on the Tahm Kench, you can turn the tables there and really start to pick on this split pusher.
Split push will be interesting this time around because you mentioned in the picks and bans for game number 1, it was all about this 5v5 team fighting. 2 front-to-back comps, you got to go through the enemy front line, then you fight the back line, both teams playing the same game. But with Fiora in the game, 5v5 team fighting is not on the menu. Someday wants to be a threat around different areas of the map.
Yeah, Someday certainly does not want to be forced to group up. In the ideal world for Fiora, you literally never group. Like, that is the kind of game you're hoping to play. You're hoping to stay in a side lane the whole time, get to an unreasonable amount of farm, and start taking over the game.
To an unreasonable amount of farm, hit up the all chat, type 1v1 me, and then hope that somebody responds to that challenge alone. Or, I mean, if you can get 5 or 6 items, bring 2, bring 3 of them.
Yeah.
A lot of times you need more than 2 just to deal with her if she can manage to get to that point. Eyes are going to be on Shrimp this time again, too. Remember, he was the one, the catalyst, like you said, that got Dignitas as a team rolling last time. And if he can get that Fiora online, or get Victor online again, or get Varus going, there's so many possibilities for this guy to, again, enable a victory.
Yeah, definitely are. And we saw how Someday did against Flame yesterday on the Renekton. So they had this matchup yesterday. Flame was able to more than handle his own. Really did look dominant there. So we'll see if Someday can do better this time against Impact, or if Impact is going to be able to, utilize his early game strength to then kind of force Someday into grouping by forcing team fights, by creating these big engages. And if you can have those 5v5 team fights and force the Fiora to group, Renekton is going to have much larger impact in the early stages.
I mean, yeah, we've been talking about Renekton can struggle with the Fiora matchup, or that can be rough, but at the same time, I mean, look at before that 3-item point. Renekton is a really strong champion in lane. He can have a really big impact in mid-game fights.
And yeah, exactly. And even before, or after that point, you can still have an easier time in the team fight. If Fiora does not parry the proper CC, you are still building essentially glass cannon, and you can get taken down very, very quickly in those 5v5s, which makes it so hard to team fight on the Fiora.
Nobody wanting to tempt fate early on here in game number 2. We talked in game number 1 about wanting to get some of that information, some of that vision down, usually around the Raptor camps. But this time around, everybody's taking a defensive posture. Nobody wanting to take those risks just yet.
Minions have spawned.
And both these junglers likely going to be starting on their Raptor camps. You would expect. We'll see if Impact stays around to give kind of like a super leash, because if Impact throws a Q and Jensen throws a Q, you can actually clear out those mini Raptors so fast as Gragas, but it's not something that you need to do. And Someday sneaking over here. He's actually going to ward the red very likely. So now, seeing that he's not on the red, it will be the second camp very likely that Contracts does. So this is going to give them that information.
Very nice leash from Cloud9 there for Contracts as well. Both Orianna and Renekton making sure they throw an ability over the wall to get those little chickens down as fast as possible. Someday really getting the best of Impact here. Look at the damage. Vital after Vital. Impact equalizes it a little bit at the end there. One last lunge.
I mean, he's almost at the point where you could flash and hit that Vital and like probably all in just kill him.
Almost.
This is pretty rough, and this is my problem with Fiora, and this is most people's problem with Fiora, is that it's like, if you're a hyper scaling champion that is impossible to beat late, should you be able to do this early, right? Like,
right.
Should you be able to also bully a lane? Yes, Someday played it well, and yes, he had the position in the bush, but still, Renekton is much more of that early game champ now that they're both level 2. We'll see what happens here. Not able to quite tag that Vital.
Trying to reach for it. Someday still feeling good about where he's at. Both of them have popped their potions, so no more extra regeneration. Just the Dorian shields.
And part of the little dance here that you're going to see between these guys is actually trying to reset the Vital. So if Impact gets a Vital facing towards Someday, you want to try to back out of range, and then that will drop the Vital and a new one will proc. That is hopefully in a more favorable position. But Someday can kind of try to follow and stand by the range minions and keep that on you. And if you back off too far, then you're going to be giving up CS. So it is definitely a back and forth, and you can't commit too heavily to that.
Nice repose, blocking the stun. Now Impact on the back foot, have to run away. Shrimp trying to get in there, repel up. Here he comes, Spider Bite for the first blood.
Such a good parry there from Someday, and that's that. I mean, if you can actually stun your opponent like that, there's no way that they can fight back. Shrimp coming in, no hesitation, flashes over the wall. They get Impact's flash and the first blood onto Shrimp, so very, very well done. Fiora still with both summoners.
Yeah, I think it was actually you that we were talking about. I was talking about with the other day. Riposte is such a huge fight turner.
Yeah, it really is. And Shrimp, it was a nice reactive flash from Impact to get out of there, but when you don't have your stun, he can easily repel onto you under your turret, finish you off, and Impact goes back to base, and he had 6 CS, so he doesn't even have a buy, essentially. Like, that's the biggest problem here.
You got a refillable potion.
Refillable and a pink ward, that's your buy, right? Whereas Someday at least gets up to pick another Doran's Blade because he had picked up a lot more of the farm before he had to go back to base. Despite not getting the kill, he gets the assist gold, he had 16 CS, so Impact's in a really tough spot now. Especially being flashless, you can start to be abused by this Fiora.
I guess the one thing that Impact can sort of be thankful for out of that is Shrimp got the kill and not Someday, so...
Yeah, he's not coming back with a Tiamat in First Blood or something like that, which can be pretty disgusting. But it's still really rough, right? And normally it's not as big of a deal. Like if they're both on even CS and then Shrimp kills you and you TP back, okay, no problem. Even summoners, you have your buy, but he didn't pick up any of the farm before he TP'd back. So even though they're even CS now, his buy was so bad that it's still extremely problematic.
Meanwhile, bottom side, Alltech shoving up with Big. Sneaky, happy to just farm underneath the turret, though. We saw some of this in Cloud9's game yesterday as well. Smoothie and Sneaky stuck under the turret, but still fine just farming.
And here is the bot lane fight. Sneaky trying to get aggressive here. Wanted to get that fourth shot off and just getting a little bit too greedy for that. Big able to land the play, hits the ignite, and that causes Sneaky to blow both of his summoners.
With those summoners down, he might be a very juicy target for Shrimp to make a visit to.
Yeah, I mean, Thresh has such good gank assistance. You can Lantern in the Elise, Flash Flay in that Jhin. Yes, you do have Smoothie there too, but some of the really good Threshes will try to land a hook on the Jhin, then Edge eats him up, and then you flay them both in, and you can go for either one.
The reach on that hook sometimes, it looks like it's nowhere close, and it just makes a little extra hop to find the guy it was looking for. Someday, though, going to be finding his mark here. One more vital smack to really put this trade in his favor. There he goes.
Pure early game lull.
Don't forget the 2017. Now he's almost able to find the kill. Pops the flash for it, but doesn't get anything for that summoner. He's forcing Impact back yet again. Jensen and Keen, very close matchup here in the mid lane. Jensen very happy that he's not laning against 2 kills and a double buff again.
Not happy, though, that he has to leave lane completely. Shrimp is chasing him out of there, and you know, Jensen is going to have to evacuate on top side. Contract's trying to force a play bot side. Nice root on Alltech.
Flourish. Alltech in some trouble here. Big trying to keep these guys away. Flashes out. Tries to keep his 80 carry safe. Gets himself in a rough spot now instead. More damage coming through. Contract's not quite able to secure this one. And Dignitas with some good moves.
And they're going to go for the dive top side here. Shrimp will... Oh, no, they're going to call it off when they miss the cocoon. I think they could have still maybe made that play happen, but it is very risky to try to dive that level 6 Renekton if you can't land the CC.
Right, the Dominus always makes it that much more difficult to execute that. Even with Repel to drop the aggro, he's going to be doing a lot of damage to both of you.
And
safe call.
So much more health, right? Like, he makes you much more tanky under that turret there. Shrimp's still sitting topside, though. If Impact gets greedy to try to shove out this wave, he could at least get his back delayed, which would be pretty problematic, but Shrimp going to decide to just head back to base for now. No, now canceling it. I think it's actually really smart. Even if you just stop the base, Impact has no TP. Now he has to stay in lane because essentially you're putting him in a position where Someday is back to lane, has already purchased. If Impact bases now, Someday can either shove the wave really hard and deny a wave to the turret, or he can try to freeze it and keep it in a really advantageous position. So he's going to decide to just try to hold the wave, deny some of those minions from his opponent, deny that experience as well. And it also means Impact is going to have to go very far up there. So Contracts is being called topside. Impact knows he's going to be in a very vulnerable spot, and this means that the jungler has to kind of come up there and protect him.
Just babysit him a little bit. And honestly, look at the gold difference between these two. Over 1,000, even with only 1 kill under Dig's belt. No objectives so far. It's all about the farm leads. They've got leads in every single lane.
Yeah, they're doing very, very well for themselves here in the early game. And Shrimp has been pretty active. You know, the bot lane was very close to being able to pick up those kills, but weren't quite able to do it. And, you know, had Sneaky been with both his summoners, you know, before that actual gank came in from Contracts, if he had not had to blow them, maybe they could have made those kills happen, right? If you can flash forward and heal on the Jhin, try to finish someone off, but that's not the situation that they were in, and they weren't able to get those kills.
Fight between these two top laners. Ulti used by Impact.
Contracts.
Someday still has his. Gotta be aware what Contracts is doing here. Riposte comes out a little bit early. Grand Challenge issued. Someday on the run. No flash available, but Impact's got his, and Someday is going to be taken down.
Well done there from Contracts. Gets up. Despite the parry, he has the slow, and Impact committing his flash. Someday did not have his back just yet. So they are able to get that kill back, and that is going to be big for Impact. He has been getting bullied around in this lane pretty hard, despite it being, you know, very even in farm. And now picking up that kill, it's going to buy him some time. He can go back to base and should be ahead in itemization.
Yep, when you look at the gold between the two of them, now he does have himself a very slightly, not super large, but at least he's back to being in the lead as Renekton. It's where you want to be.
Yeah, exactly. It's very important to not fall too far behind early. If this guy can be bullying you at this stage in the game, then he gets to this really fast pace where he picks up those items that he needs to take over way too early.
Keen with the blue buff in mid lane, clearing out those minions with the laser. Here's what you were talking about last game, so people can sort of see the difference in what we were discussing with the Victor. The itemization this time around. You've got the Dark Seal with the Dorian's Ring, with the Ionian Boots of Lucidity. He just cannot go for those Hex Core upgrades as effectively as he could in game number 1.
Yeah, you just can't actually get enough gold to base there on time and be able to come back with that first upgrade. So when you head back to base, your opponent shoves you in, they're going to base. If you don't actually match that, you get stuck in a lane where you're going to be out of mana and really going to give up a lot. So you're forced back and you have to get these smaller pieces, these little upgrades.
Impact still having to play very respectful of Someday. Those vitals spawning in spots that make life a little bit difficult for him. Giving Someday both the heal and the true damage means that every single one of those makes the trade that much more difficult to come out on top of. But Contracts on this bottom side.
And Someday is playing this lane very, very well. I don't want to take any credit away from him. The fact that he is this confident, you know, is somewhat enabled by some of these deep wards. A nice parry there. The ultimate is up. He could potentially look to chase it. No.
Yeah, another nice riposte onto that Renekton stun. Reading Impact so well, knowing he's going to go for the dash and the full trade.
Yeah, and I mean, it's timing, it's prediction, it's mind games there. And he's able to get the better of Impact, pushing him out. And this pink ward that Shrimp placed a while ago has been staying in C9's jungle by the Krugs for quite a long time. That has been kind of giving him some of the confidence to be able to play aggressive. We'll see if Contracts actually checks the bush and clears that out, because that is allowing Someday to bully Impact so much more. And it's likely not going to actually be spotted, because Contracts is probably going to come right over to top lane. Since the TP came in, they're trying to make a play happen. And yeah, the pink ward just sits there. And that's why you always have to check the bushes. Anytime you're pathing through a jungle, any bush you walk nearby, you should be stepping into to really make sure, because that's been there for a couple minutes now. And they even saw the fact that Contracts base, so they could try to make a gank happen of their own.
Shrimp is waiting here, thinking about how Contracts might be wanting to go for another play onto Someday. If he does, Shrimp wants to turn it into a full-on 2v2. The damage between the Elise and the Fiora would be extreme.
It would be very high, but that being said, they could turn it around. This Renekton Gragas 2v2 is very strong too, but now Impact's so low already.
Oh, the damage onto Shrimp, though. Put him on the Barbie, because these guys have made the 2v2 outplay. The riposte comes out, but it's going to be blocked up, and Impact will live through it.
That was so huge. Impact being able to survive long enough, and he holds his vital from the ultimate against the wall, so Fiora cannot proc her ultimate heal. That gives him enough time, slicing, dicing back and forth through the bush. And Contracts, though, so quick to respond to that fight. It looked like it would be going the way of Dignitas when Impact got chunked out that hard, but Contracts with the body slam flash, connecting on both, ulting them both in. They have so much CC between those two members that they're able to lock them up and knock them down.
And that outplay earns them turret first blood, catapults Cloud9 to a 1,000 gold lead. Here's one more look at this.
And I mean, Somebody's pretty far away, so just as he gets there, Contracts goes in, body slam flash. He places the flash between the two members. If he had just body slam forward, he would have hit only Someday. So that was beautifully positioned by Contracts to actually CC both of them up, and then Impact with some nice juking back and forth between the bushes. Contracts even blocking the parry damage, making sure he's staying in between the two so that any Q forward would connect on him and not on the Renekton.
By the way, that was Someday's flash, too, to try to finish Impact off. So that Summoner, now also down for the next few minutes, is another resource they won't have to get Someday going on this Fiora. 0-2-1 after what looked like a strong start for him. Now on his back foot, he's got a phage against a Black Cleaver.
Yeah, it was a really good start from him, honestly. In the isolated 1v1, he was bullying, he pushed Impact out level 1, he was getting the CS advantage, they got this dive kill, everything was going great. The Contract has done a fantastic job getting up there, turning this lane around, and now with that completed Black Cleaver, Impact is certainly in a position of power and will be for quite some time.
Compare this to last game, where Contracts was sitting on no kills, no assists, when Shrimp had 2 of both. This time around, it's Contracts that's getting the better of the early game jump.
It certainly is, but you gotta give some credit over here to Keen, who 2 games in a row has been doing pretty well mid lane, and this time without really any of the help. He get knocked in.
Ooh, good flash away, trying to keep himself safe. Goes down the Chaos Storm, but the Shockwave will take him out.
Cast their curse just as I want to go compliment him.
Just
for
as you
actually
try to say how good
out-farming.
he is, he gets bopped.
Still going to give him the credit, though. I mean, he was up in farm against Jensen, which almost no one is doing this season. Yes, you could say Victor is a good farming champion or whatever you want, but regardless, he's playing against Jensen, who has been dominating people in the mid lane, really bullying them out, and Akeen has been holding his own, but another nice gank from Contracts. And these two games have really been all about the junglers, despite not having his flash there. Such a well-placed ultimate. Akeen should have given him the respect that it was going to hit and just flashed early. And if you flash to the other side of that ultimate, you are out scot-free. Instead, he underestimates it. He thinks he maybe can sidestep it or that it won't hit. And he uses both his summoners and still goes down.
Sneaky and Smoothie still just hanging out here in the bottom lane too. Falling a little bit behind in terms of farm against Altec. This is also what happened last game. Altec's been doing a good job in terms of CS, building that economy passively.
And Jhin is not the strongest of laners. You know,
Right.
you do have all-in potential with Jhin and the Tahm Kench, but if you're not going to be going for that, you know, you're not really doing a lot of poker for anything from this Tahm Kench. You're kind of sitting there and farming, and that's okay because they're getting advantages elsewhere, and that's not where their jungler is playing around right now. So they will be effective later as long as they are just farming and playing it safe. And that's sometimes what the game is about, right? You cannot play aggressively if your team is not there to support you, or you can be too easily punished. And sometimes that's what you have to do. Just sit back and let yourself be careful.
Jensen getting himself a second dose of blue buff. Got the first one from taking down Keen. Gonna get the second one now, donated over by
good.
Contracts. Definitely a good feeling when you're the mid laner, having that for a longer than normal period, as we've got another 1v1 between top laners. Level 11 Impact versus level 10 Someday. Impact doing a good job hugging that wall, preventing the heal from coming out. The flash into the stun, and he is done. Impact with a killing spree. Keen trying to mop this one up if he can. The ult comes out, but the dash over the wall. And I'll trade my E for somebody's R any day of the week.
Yeah, can't actually take him down, so Impact able to get out, no problem, gets the solo kill. I mean, the itemization is so in his favor after all the stuff that has been happening in top lane that he really can take over, and he's doing such a great job. But Shrimp is here, still trying to chase him down.
Shrimp, a flash over the wall, and that's enough damage. There's no way Impact's getting out of that one. Tried his hardest, but eventually they'll get you if they come back after 2 or 3 different attempts.
Getting a little bit confident there, staying around with very low health. But I mean, that was Impact on a Black Cleaver plus Tiamat to not even a completed Black Cleaver from Someday. So the itemization so heavily in his favor, and the fact that he's playing very intelligently and hugging that wall means he can't rock the ult.
And now Keen has no ult to try to fight Jensen with. He's just going to be solo killed. One last auto attack, and Jensen's got him.
Jensen just autos him down there. Nailing the ultimate was all he really needed to do. It does cost him his flash, but still very well done. He has full control over the mid lane. Top side is going well for them. Dignitas are kind of in recovery mode. They're putting themselves in a position now where they're going to have to wait quite a while for somebody to take over. You know, he has not had the good early game that he started out with. He has started to really fall behind in this mid game, and Renekton is going to be bullying him for a while. So they need to buy time. They need to establish vision. They need to find somewhere safe for somebody to farm and scale up.
At the same time, Cloud9 needs the opposite. They can't really afford to play the kind of game that Dignitas played in game number 1, that waiting game.
That pick ward is still there, by the way, Tops.
Altec is not in a very good spot right now. He's got summoner spells, but why would you even waste him? The man is dead to rights. Impact 4, 2, and 1.
Now they're ulting topside. Sneaky getting soloed down here by Fiora, but here comes Tahm Kench.
Oh, deadly flourish hitting on the very edge of it. Smoothie there for the backup. Impact coming around from the side as well. Look at
Nice
the
parry.
down. Curtain call is out. 3 shots of hit. Jensen coming around from behind. A killing spree onto the Fiora. Shockwave onto 2. Shrimp going to be taken low. Chaos Storm to try to disengage. But Cloud9 has found 2. And now we'll look for Rift Herald maybe? Or not.
They could even just push mid if they wanted to try to do that or reset. Sneaky going to be farming up on the top side, but such quick reactions from Smoothie deserves so much credit there. Getting in with the ultimate, landing the immediate exhaust onto Someday, keeps Sneaky alive, and allows them to get another kill over onto Jensen.
Keen, 0, 2, and 0. Very different story from how he looked in the first game. He's the one forced to play from behind this time around.
Yeah, we'll see if Cloud9 can extend their lead, right? Because it's kind of the swap story now. They're the ones with the 3-4K gold advantage, as Dignitas had last game. Do they play passively, or do they try to really push the pace? And we'll find out as Sneaky trying to retreat here. Someday looking for that solo kill, flashing, getting all the vitals, but the exhaust comes in. He knows he's not going to be able to finish him off with Tahm Kench there, so getting out. This is a really nice parry waits for the third stack hit from Tom Kent and actually carries the Devour from Smoothie, which gets him out, but Jensen already near flanking. Picks up 1 kill, lands the double shockwave. Will have to be backing off, but still, well done from C9.
Jensen clearing up creeps there in the mid wave. Has 3-0-0 as his scoreline right now. This is what we're talking about with Jensen. This is when Cloud9 can shine, is when this guy has the opportunity to be the star, be that damage topper. Altec, though, face checking him and Renekton with the ulti up. Not something that's normally going to be a huge success for you. Cast thrown out. Altec with the flash away to keep himself alive. Now Shrimp and Big trying to find the damage here.
Fiora's here too. Someday has
over the wall. Impact is now caught behind enemy lines. Will look to have some of those fancy feet and escape if possible. TP not available. Altec still hanging around. Fires off the rain of arrows just to keep him slowed down. Impact wants to go for Altec if he can, but he's going to be stunned up before he can do it. Shrimp grabs a kill.
Yeah, C9 pushing mid lane at the same time, though, so they just shove up that mid wave instead of trying to run over and help him.
Ooh, flash
no
into the play into the death sentence, but Tom Kent says, nope, no playmaking allowed.
Yeah, no fun for you. And they should be able to knock down this turret here pretty soon. It's a good response from C9. Impact knows he's essentially dead, so just tries to buy time, and they just shove up mid lane. What it does get for Dignitas, though, is more time for Someday. He's alone on the top side. You know, he can pick up some of that farm. Not going to be able to knock down the turret or anything, but he is recouping some of this gold and getting a CS advantage.
Meanwhile, game number 1 was Ocean, Ocean, Ocean. Game number 2, Mountain, Mountain, Mountain. And Cloud9 is going to have serious threat onto Baron, turrets, everything.
Yeah, I mean, that is pretty scary. This is not the best Baron take came from C9, but they're engaging onto Altec.
Altec caught out again, and that 4th shot just detonates.
Contracts really has been so good this game. Like, it just feels like he's moving around in the right places, supporting his team, playing extremely well for Cloud9 after what was a much slower game 1 for him. But yeah, that triple mountain, it's like, even if you're not really a strong Baron team, it doesn't matter. You are going to shred through the Baron, and you have so much more threat. If Someday shows bot side without TP like he is now, and Cloud9 is ready for it, they can just turn on Baron right away. So that's something that Dignitas is always going to have in the back of their minds.
Dignitas has improved their Baron situation significantly from the classic meme days of Dignitas.
They're one of the best Baron teams in the league right now, I think.
They really are. They've had fantastic performances around the objective so far, but like you said, it's a hard hand to be dealt this time because you always have to be on watch. Someday needs to be in perfect sync with the rest of the team, not show himself too early because just a couple of seconds could be all Cloud9 needs to pull that trigger and do exactly what Dignitas did in the first game. A Baron can be the difference between a stalemate that lasts for 20 minutes and a game that ends in 5.
Exactly. I mean, it really can give you the power to close these games out because you can no longer just delay and wave clear and buy time for that Fiora. It becomes so hard to actually clear through those Baron buffed up minions, especially if there's multiple lanes of them. Someday down on the bot side with Impact. I don't know if he's going to want to try to pick this fight. Looks like he's actually keen for it, even though he's down on items.
Trying to force some damage onto this Renekton. Won't go any further towards the turret. Cleaver, Tiamat versus Cleaver, Tiamat, Jarum's Fist. So it's very close in terms of itemization. There are some extra stats for the Renekton, but I mean, this is Someday. This is a guy who, when he came to the North American LCS, everybody was like, oh my goodness, this is one of the top 3 top laners probably in the world. He's going to do so much. Spring didn't go the way Dignitas wanted at the start. They managed to rally and come back as the split went on, and now in summer, one of the top teams, one of the top contenders, largely thanks to Someday's performances. It just took him a split to really get to where he needed to be.
Yeah, and a lot of the green imports kind of take that time. I mean, people forget the Impact took some time to really kind of get going for Cloud9. C9, though, already onto this Baron, so they don't kill off this ward because the vision is blocked by the pink ward. And now they're just going to decide to rush it. They're TPing Impact over. They know somebody doesn't have his teleport, and he is bot side.
Meanwhile, Shrimp almost going to be killed instantly by Jensen. He's forced to repel up, lands with only 5% of his HP. The Chaos Storm moving towards the fight. Jensen going to be tied up, but Baron is already secured. And Cloud9 finds exactly what they were looking for.
That's what they wanted. You know, Someday bottom side without the TP. That's what we were talking about. It opens up that opportunity, but I do think from the position that they were in, it's smart for somebody to stay on the bottom side, pick up the turret, because even if he roams up, as some players are tempting to do, you get nothing done there, right? So at least he gets some gold on his character, something that he can try to work towards to hopefully scale, but it's going to be really tough for them now. A C9 is going to be looking to push the pace, to crack the inhibitors, and really not allow somebody to ever have a chance to get going in this game.
I really like how Contract stopped his back there for a moment when he saw Alltech walk past. Probably telling the team, you guys see this guy? 80 carry, split pushing, alone, again? I just have to say, no, don't go for that. Not this time. We'll get him again later. He backs up, the whole team getting themselves ready for the next fight. The Andrews Torment, Morello Namicon, needlessly large rod onto Jensen.
Trap.
Sneaky with the Infinity Edge and the Yubu's Ghostblade. These guys are real scary if they catch
they might
it out.
find Sneaky. Sneaky is walking into the 3-man squad.
Oh, no. Gets himself over the wall with the flash out. Smoothie now may potentially be the target. Curtain Call going to be opened up. And Sneaky's in a safe spot to contribute damage to this fight. Shrimp is already dead. Alltech now going to be the target. He is down too. Smoothie barely staying alive, and a nice reversal from Cloud9.
Yeah, very well done. Quick flash from Sneaky can still contribute with that Jhin ultimate. And I think Someday looking to make something happen. He knows they need a play to stop this Baron, but Impact knows it too, and he's just going to back off.
Wants to keep himself in a decent enough spot. Grand Challenge issued, a lot of vitals out, the flash away. Impact trying to turn it around. Their post fired off into the wrong direction, and Someday must now retreat as the tier 2 falls in the mid lane. Turret number 5 for Cloud9.
Really good flash there from Impact, actually, to dodge the Vital proc. So if you hit a lunge and it contacts, it reduces the cooldown massively. So the fact that that lunge misses means that Fiora cannot continue that chase, cannot actually get the final Vitals and finish off that kill onto Impact.
Smoothie and the rest of C9, they know that they've got the advantage. They know how far ahead they are. This is a 9,000 gold lead at 25 minutes. That is huge.
Yeah, it's really big. I mean, the game has been blown pretty wide open here by Cloud9. They have been pushing the pace. They're looking to take over the jungle, getting vision control down here. And they know they have to keep pushing because you don't want this Fiora to ever get to the point where she can just start easily 1v1ing the Recton, because that could delay so much.
3 items was a point we were talking about. Once she gets that next big item, usually you see a Death Dance start to come out at this point in time. So she's still got about 3,500 gold to go. After that, you got a problem on your hands.
Yeah, I mean, even now, she can certainly duel up against Impact, but a C9 not looking to give them that opportunity. They're sieging down. Use the Jhin ultimate to zone your opponents off. Somebody's trying to threaten the flank here, but really they don't want to fight. They just need to wave clear.
That sentence doesn't find its way onto anyone. Cloud9 still trying to push this one down. Cocoon comes out. Big going to be going down. More damage coming through. Forced to run back if he can. Someday caught off to the side. Impact almost taking him down to 0. Jensen seals the deal. Unstoppable as Big dies as well. Dignitas have lost 2, but so have their opponents. Contracts and Smoothie fall, but the damage dealers on C9 are still up and running, and they take down the inhib.
Yeah, they get the inhib, and they are looking. Impact dashing around. Can't quite find a Keen or Alltech, so they should retreat now. But they have cracked the base, and they have really gotten so much out of this Baron buff.
Jensen not with the most effective shockwave there at the end of the fight, but sometimes you just got to send a message.
And Sinky just using the Jhin ultimate to zone off the opponents. Now that they have been pushed back a little bit, somebody's on the side. C9 sees the turret is low, move forward, finish it off before then turning for the fight. So good targeting there from them. And then the 3-man squad just zoning Someday out, being able to take him down. And yes, some of the front line goes down for C9, but all their key members are still alive and quite healthy, so there's not much Dig can really do to defend that inhib.
Impact now going for that Gargoyle Stone Plate for his 3rd item. Going to make him very strong in those team fights. Like you brought up earlier, if he can go into the 5v5s, he's more effective than Fiora, especially with an item like that.
Exactly. You don't need to always be able to win the 1v1s. And Impact has been playing it very intelligently. Even when put behind, he waited for his jungler, then was able to get some work done, in that 1v1 and in the 2v2. Has played a very fantastic game, I think, from the position that he was put in.
And that's what we wanted to see from this guy. That was the story for Cloud9, is can Impact get back into the spot where we feel like he's a legitimate threat for Cloud9?
And especially when dealing with Someday, who's really been crushing it this season. So he's going up against probably the best Fiora in the league right now and holding his own. I also think it is pretty intelligent that even when he is ahead in some of this itemization, he's showing the proper respect over to Fiora, knowing the fact that Someday still could take him out if he stands and fights. So really playing these fights slowly, trying to just delay, because he does not need to kill Someday. He just needs to neutralize Someday.
Exactly. Stop that split push from doing what it needs to do and finding its way onto your Nexus while you're occupied elsewhere. Cloud9, though, looking to occupy themselves in the top lane for a 2nd inhibitor.
Is going to look for these fights. He needs to get solo kills to really delay the game. But Impact, again, just backing off. He knows that his 4-man squad is so much stronger, so it's up to Someday. We'll see if he can actually pull off a play, because if he can kill off Impact, he could perhaps draw C9 back to base and buy them some more time.
But you have to kill him. You can't just afford to send him back. Because Cloud9 won't care about losing that tier 2 if they're pushing onto the tier 3, if they're taking down the inhib. It's got to be a
second inhib, so they need to wave clear. They need to play this out.
Flash into body slam, into the cast backwards, and with Keen out of the picture, Cloud9 will be making their move. Impact's TP completes first. Someday is forced to cancel his, I believe. Nope, does complete it. He's into the fight, but he won't be there for long as he's going to be forced away. Deadly Flourish comes out, gets himself sidestepped. Curtain Call opens up. Big going to be soaking those shots as more damage and CC comes through. Adios! Jensen dominating as Cloud9 now 5-man pushes towards the Nexus. Turrets are gone. Cloud9 is taking us to game number 3. We'll have to see if they manage to rack up a couple more kills on the way there. They take Someday out. Shockwave comes through. Just throwing it out there for the hell of it as they go for the Nexus, send us to game number 3, and make a statement against Team Dignitas.
Really well played game 2 here from C9. They tie it back up, and I mean, it's looking eerily similar to Dignitas' series yesterday. Fantastic game 1. Game 2 goes pretty heavily in your opponent's favor. Will game 3 be the same as yesterday against Immortals, where they got manhandled?
You're telling me this looks eerily similar to yesterday. I'm saying this looks eerily similar to 30 minutes ago, where the jungler went off in the early game, the AD carry and the mid laner both didn't die, and they finished the Nexus off nice and clean. These two games were so similarly played by both teams, convincingly, too. Game number 1, Dignitas, they seemed in control the entire time. Game number 2, Cloud9, a rough early start in the top lane. After that, they were just in the driver's seat. Game number 3 will be the interesting one, because that's the one where we find out who can repeat it.
Yeah, exactly. And both these teams have kind of gotten the measure of each other. They have, a couple games under their belt today now, and will really be looking to have their best game yet in game 3. You don't want to be giving up these losses, especially as Cloud9, who's sitting at like 4-3 right now. They do not want to be 4-4 after 4 weeks of the LCS. Like, especially with a lot of these other teams climbing, it can become very difficult to actually catch up, for those playoff standings later in the split.
Yeah, the implication of winning or losing this is very interesting for both teams. Cloud9, you win, all of a sudden you're tied with Dignitas. You're up there in contention for the very top of the leaderboard again. If you lose it, you're back down to an even record, which, like you said, feels really bad. Dignitas, they want to be back in that running for first as well, and they need a win here to be in that spot. For a deeper dive on the win, though, let's hand things off to Dash and Mark.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. Evening up the series here, Cloud9 extending us to a 3rd game against Dignitas. Looking at how they did it, we're going to have to put a spotlight on that top lane matchup a little bit. It's talked about plenty when we talk about Dignitas, is that Someday is a top performer, at least this split. And so obviously if you could get him rolling, that is something you'd like to do. But I know you have some thoughts on how Dignitas is supporting Someday.
It just feels like they tunnel on making sure he's ahead, and other teams are well aware of that fact. We spent just watch that game over, realize how long the camera was in the top lane. Like, the observers know, we know, the enemy team knows, everyone knows there's action in the top lane. You have the Fiora Renekton matchup, and he destroys Impact level 1. You get a great dive off, and now the matchup's totally in his favor. And all you need to do from that point, really, to win that game, at least on the top side, because things can still go wrong elsewhere.
Yeah, exactly.
Just get some vision control for him and let him win the matchup 1v1. He was out CSing him, he was chunking him out, he was making it very difficult for the Renekton, and then they just kept threatening dives, and they took 2v2s, and Contracts and Impact, to be fair, knew they were coming and played them well.
There's something to be said for being overly attentive to a lane and playing into another team, right? If you make it very clear that your entire game plan is going to be one thing, then it makes it much easier for the opposing team to respond to that, as opposed to opening up the map and making them or forcing them into making choices.
That's exactly what Immortals did yesterday, where they just camped Someday super hard one of the games and smashed them. It's a similar thing this time around, where once the Someday lane seems to fall apart, the rest of the map just starts dying all over the place. It was very strange to see for a game that started so well. 5 minutes into the game, I was ready to be like, oh, this may be over. The Fiora's so far ahead.
Yeah, and again, I want to now move ourselves to the mid lane, because we see that Victor matchup into the Orianna, and where Jensen has been a top performer, particularly in the laning phases. All 3 of the Danes in the mid lane have incredible CSD stats here. Shrimp making just 1 or 2 visitations to the mid lane, forcing Jensen out to kind of buy Keen that time to actually build his own CS advantage in the mid lane. It's like, well, if you can do that in the mid lane, maybe go do that in the bot lane too, and continue to let Someday do work in the top lane alone.
Yeah, because you already set up your win condition in Someday. You've denied their win condition a little bit in the mid lane, where Jensen's now playing from behind in a matchup that's not super great.
Don't draw attention back to your win condition.
Yeah, you just kept pulling them up there, and you saw Alltech and Big have a little bit of a lack of synergy between the two of them. They had a couple close 2v2s, but then once the map started opening up based on the top side, it completely fell apart.
And we see it here at 18 minutes, a 1-for-0 in favor of C9, so not many kills going over, but again, it's that attention to the top side of the map from Dignitas, and now C9 is prepared to deal with Someday and the threat that he has there.
And everyone is moving up onto the top side now. You see them going up to Someday, trying to get him. They're doing their best to keep him alive. There's nothing going on elsewhere on the map. It's 100% what's Someday up to. How can we help Someday? Let's get Someday ahead. What support does he need? It's not about, let's go shove in mid lane right now. No one's in mid lane. There's nothing else going on the map.
Right, if Someday's pulling the pressure, which a Fiora should be doing, right? She should be forcing C9 to respond with more than just impact, at least as the game scales later. Well, great, if he's pulling that attention, why don't you use that as an opportunity to do something else on the map, as opposed to also go there and see what happens in the 5v5.
Yeah, that's the case, and especially since their team comp is fine in that kind of 4-1 setup where Elise, Thresh, Varus have a ton of pickoff. You have the Victor, for a ton of AoE teamfight damage, and Fiora can mostly deal with split pushing because you have so much wave clear.
Now, we've talked throughout the split about this guy on your screen here, Contracts. You know, he's been in some times and in some places an absolutely stellar player and carry for the team. And this time around, will get player of the game. The problem, I think, is that he needs to find consistency in these performances. He found, or he rather figured out what he needed to do in this game to respond to that Someday focus and keep his lanes afloat. But that's not happening game to game to game.
That's the thing, is the one place that he always seems to find synergy is with Jensen. This time around, knowing how much attention is going to go up to the top side, he was there to counter it. Great plays by him just in terms of being in the right place, right time, as well as the execution of them. Goes mid, gets that back in Jensen's favor, and then starts snowballing the bot lane as well. His ability to affect all 3 lanes, especially post 10 minutes, not just being like, oh, I did 3 camps or I did the cheesy kind of path. Knowing how to affect them outside of this, first 10 minutes of the game was really, really beneficial.
And here's where we find ourselves going into a Game 3 in a Dignitas series where they win Game 1 in pretty stellar fashion and then lose Game 2 in relatively stellar fashion. And I've got to wonder for this squad, again, about when we talk about mental fortitude and fragility, you look at a team like TSM who's on that upward climb, only mirroring them in match score right now, but loses far less games on their way to doing so.
I think the big thing for Dignitas, and this sounds kind of weird, is that when Someday's on a tank, I think they actually play better as a team. One, Someday knows how to engage super well, so you already have the kind of team fight start off taken care of. But the big thing is, in the early game, you don't feel like you need to snowball for Someday. He's not on a carry where it's like, oh, get Someday really fed, he'll carry us.
Right.
You have to play the map more honestly, and I think that actually benefits them because Shrimp's super aggressive, and if you are not just tying him up to the top lane, whether that's his decision or the coaching staff or Someday's communication, who knows why that becomes such a vacuum, but when it isn't that way, I actually feel like Dignitas' early games are better.
Oh, that's very interesting. We'll see if Dignitas decides to fall back to that strategy of putting Someday on a tank. Of course, they are up against C9, the team that we talk about being successful in those team fighting phases, which could just make for a very exciting Game 3. It is going to come down to that Game 3 between Cloud9 and Dignitas. Meet us back here after the break to see who can end their weekend with a win. Don't go anywhere.
Now Impact on the back foot, have to run away. Shrimp trying to get in there, repel up. Here he comes, Spider Bite for the first blood.
Now Impact solo already.
Oh, the damage onto Shrimp, though. Put him on the Barbie because these guys have made the 2v2 outplay. The riposte comes out, but it's going to be blocked up, and Impact will live through it.
Fight. I'm fine. I'm really fine. I can cancel. Yeah. I'm really fine. 80. I'm 1 HP. I'm 1 HP.
I'm ulti still.
I'm
mid? I'm gonna run mid, yeah.
Really well played Game 2 here from C9. They tie it back up.